Ambassador Sarah Chun adjusted her formal diplomatic robes for the 1,000th time as she walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Council station. The fabric felt heavy against her shoulders, much like the weight of representing all of humanity in this vast political arena where Earth was still considered barely more than a curiosity. The station itself was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed anything humanity had built. Crystalline walls stretched impossibly high, with gravity fields that allowed beings to walk on surfaces that would be ceilings back on Earth. Bioluminescent plants from a dozen different worlds cast rainbow patterns across the polished floors, where delegates from hundreds of species conducted their business. Sarah had been walking these halls for 3 years now, ever since Earth had been granted provisional observer status in the Galactic Council. It was a fancy way of saying they were allowed to watch the grown-ups make decisions, but weren't trusted to have opinions of their own. Every proposal humanity had submitted had been politely dismissed. Every concern they raised was met with condescending smiles and gentle pats on the head. The Zephyrian delegate, Corlin, fifth of his name, approached her with his usual mixture of amusement and barely concealed disdain. His tall, willowy frame towered over her as his 4 arms gestured in what passed for friendly among his people. Ambassador Chun. His voice carried the musical quality all Zephyrians possessed, though it always sounded slightly mocking when directed at humans. Still pushing for that quaint little mining rights proposal, I see. How wonderfully persistent you primitive species can be. Sarah forced her practiced, diplomatic smile. Good morning, Corlin. Yes, we believe the asteroid belt in the Kepler system would be an excellent opportunity for human development. Corlin's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Oh, my dear, sweet human, that system is far too complex for your people to manage safely. Perhaps in a few centuries, when you've learned to properly handle space travel beyond your own solar system, we might reconsider. The hegemony has plans for those resources that extend far beyond your understanding. The hegemony. Always the hegemony. The alliance of 12 species that had been running galactic politics for the past millennium. They spoke of progress and cooperation, but Sarah had learned to read between the lines. Every decision benefited the established powers while keeping newer species like humanity firmly in their place. We appreciate the hegemony's wisdom, Sarah replied, each word carefully measured. Perhaps you could share some of those plans, so we might better understand how to contribute. Contribute. This time Corlin's laugh was less musical and more sharp. My dear ambassador, your species barely qualifies as spacefaring. You still use chemical rockets for most of your transportation. Your longest space journey took you, what, 2 years to reach your neighboring planet? We traversed the galaxy in days. He was right, of course. Humanity's technology was primitive compared to the miraculous devices these species wielded. But Sarah had been studying, learning, watching. She had begun to notice things that perhaps the hegemony preferred to keep quiet. You're absolutely right, Sarah said, maintaining her smile. We have so much to learn. In fact, I was hoping you might explain something that's been puzzling our scientists. Corlin preened at the opportunity to display his superiority. Of course. What simple concept are your people struggling with now? It's about the quantum displacement drives that most council species use. Our physicists are curious about the energy requirements. Based on our calculations, the power needed should be exponentially higher than what seems to be generated by standard fusion cores. For just a moment, Corlin's expression flickered. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Sarah had learned to watch for such tells during her years of diplomatic poker games. Your calculations are obviously flawed, he said quickly. Primitive mathematics cannot comprehend advanced engineering. Of course, Sarah nodded agreeably. Though it is curious that every species seems to have made the same breakthrough at roughly the same technological development period. Almost as if there was some external factor involved. Corlin's 4 hands moved in what Sarah had learned was a nervous gesture among his people. I'm afraid I have important matters to attend to, Ambassador. Perhaps we can continue this fascinating discussion another time. As he glided away with obvious haste, Sarah allowed herself a small, genuine smile. After 3 years of careful observation, patient questions, and diplomatic humiliation, she was finally beginning to see the cracks in the hegemony's perfect facade. Back in her quarters that evening, Sarah activated the quantum entanglement communicator that linked her directly to Earth. It was one of humanity's few truly advanced pieces of technology, though the Council had no idea how advanced it really was. "Command, this is Chun. I need to speak with Director Martinez immediately." "Priority Alpha." The response came through almost instantly. "Sarah, what have you found?" "I think I know why they keep us locked out, Marcus. And I think I know what we need to do about it." The secure conference room deep within the lunar colony hummed with nervous energy as Earth's top scientists, military leaders, and politicians gathered around the holographic display. Director Marcus Martinez stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the data Sarah had transmitted from the Council station. "What you're looking at," Marcus began, gesturing to the swirling mass of information floating before them, "is the result of 3 years of careful intelligence gathering by Ambassador Chun. And what it reveals is going to change everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy." Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading quantum physicist, leaned forward in her chair. "These energy signatures don't make sense, Marcus. If what Sarah discovered is accurate, then every species in the Galactic Council is using technology that should be impossible with their stated energy sources." "That's because they're not using their own energy sources," Marcus replied. He manipulated the display, highlighting a series of quantum patterns that seemed to repeat across dozens of different species' technology. They're all tapping into the same external power grid. Admiral Chun Kowalski, no relation to the ambassador despite the shared surname, frowned at the implications. "Are you saying there's some kind of galactic infrastructure that we don't know about?" "Worse than that," Dr. Vasquez interjected, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she ran new calculations. "Based on these patterns, this isn't just some advanced power grid. This is technology that's actively monitoring and controlling every species that uses it." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Patricia Hayes was the first to speak, her military training cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "You're talking about a control system. Someone or something is keeping every species in the galaxy dependent on technology they don't actually understand." Marcus nodded grimly. "Sarah believes the hegemony isn't the real power in galactic politics. They're just the administrators for whoever built this system. And every time a species reaches sufficient technological development to potentially discover the truth, they're offered membership in the Council along with access to these miraculous technologies. Technologies that come with strings attached," Admiral Kowalski observed. "More than strings," Dr. Vasquez corrected, pulling up a new set of data. "If my analysis is correct, any species using this technology could be shut down instantly. All their ships, their infrastructure, their entire civilization could be crippled with the flip of a switch." President Morrison, who had been listening in via secure link from Earth, finally spoke. "So why haven't they offered us this technology yet? We've been in the Council for 3 years. "Because we're different," Marcus replied. "Every other species followed the same development pattern. Fusion power, then quantum drives, then FDL communication, then space-folding technology. Each step leading naturally to the next, each one requiring the external power source to function." Dr. Vasquez picked up the explanation. "But humanity developed quantum entanglement communication before we had reliable fusion power. We built our FDL communication network using principles that are completely independent of their system. We've been doing everything backwards and making it work through sheer stubbornness. They're afraid of us," General Hayes realized. "Not because we're more advanced, but because we're unpredictable. We might discover their control system by accident. Worse," Marcus said, "we might have already built technology that could threaten it." The holographic display shifted to show Earth's communication network. Thousands of quantum entanglement nodes spread across the solar system, each one maintaining instantaneous contact with the others. It was humanity's pride and joy their first truly galactic-scale technology. Our quantum network operates on principles that the hegemony clearly doesn't understand, Dr. Vasquez explained. Every time they've tried to study it, they get confused by our approach. We're using quantum mechanics in ways that shouldn't work according to their understanding of physics. Because their understanding is limited by the technology they've been given, Admiral Kowalski said, pieces clicking into place. They never had to truly master the fundamentals because they were handed advanced applications. President Morrison's voice carried a new edge when he spoke again. What are our options, people? Marcus looked around the room at the faces of humanity's brightest minds and strongest leaders. We have three choices. We can accept their offer when it comes, integrate with their system, and become another dependent species in their galaxy-spanning empire. We can continue as we are, remaining on the sidelines while they gradually box us in and limit our development. Or, General Hayes prompted, or we do what humans do best. Marcus smiled, though it wasn't a pleasant expression. We break their rules and see what happens. Dr. Vasquez pulled up the final set of data, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I've been running simulations based on Sarah's intelligence. Our quantum entanglement network isn't just immune to their control system. If we modified it correctly, it could potentially disrupt their entire galactic infrastructure. The room erupted in concerned voices. The idea of taking hostile action against a galactic civilization was terrifying, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. Not destroy, he clarified. Disrupt. Show every species in the galaxy that their advanced technology can be turned off just as easily as it was turned on. Force the real controllers to reveal themselves. That's incredibly dangerous, President Morrison said. We'd be making enemies of every species in the Council. We'd be freeing them, General Hayes corrected, and showing them who their real enemies are. Admiral Kowalski was already studying tactical implications. How long would it take to modify our network? Dr. Vasquez consulted her calculations. 6 months, maybe 8 if we want to be absolutely certain of the results. Do it, President Morrison ordered. But nobody moves until we have a complete understanding of what we're dealing with. Marcus, I want Sarah to keep gathering intelligence. We need to know everything about this control system before we act. As the meeting disbanded, Marcus remained behind to study the holographic display. Humanity had always been the newcomer, the primitive species trying to earn its place among the stars. But perhaps it was time to stop asking for permission and start demanding answers. The galaxy was about to learn that being polite was just one option in humanity's diplomatic toolkit. The council chamber was a cathedral of politics, its soaring architecture designed to make even the largest species feel small and humble. Representatives from 300 worlds sat in carefully arranged tiers, each delegation positioned according to their species, standing in a complex hierarchy that governed galactic civilization. At the very top sat the 12, the founding members of the hegemony, looking down upon the lesser species with benevolent superiority. Sarah Chun sat in the observer section, relegated to the back rows with the other primitive species who were deemed unworthy of full membership. For 3 years, she had watched this same performance play out countless times. The hegemony would present their agenda. The established species would debate with carefully choreographed disagreements, and any actual dissent would be politely ignored or smoothly redirected. Today will be different. The Council recognizes Ambassador Thyrix of the Centaurian Republic, announced Corlin, who served as today's session moderator. The blue-scaled reptilian rose gracefully, his 3 heads moving in perfect synchronization as he spoke. Honored delegates, Thyrix began, his voice carrying the authority of species that had been part of the hegemony for over 6 centuries. We gather to address the concerning technological developments among certain recently contacted species. It has come to our attention that some civilizations are pursuing research paths that could destabilize the carefully maintained balance of our galactic community. Sarah's blood chilled. They were talking about humanity. After months of careful intelligence gathering and delicate preparation, someone had noticed their activities. The species in question, Thyrix continued, his central head focusing directly on Sarah while the other two surveyed the chamber, has developed quantum communication technology using principles that our scientists find unconventional. While we appreciate their creativity, we must consider the potential dangers of unregulated technological development. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates turned to look at Sarah, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. She maintained her diplomatic composure, but her heart was racing. Therefore, Thyrix concluded, the hegemony moves to offer immediate full membership to the human delegation, including access to our standard technological package and integration protocols. This generous offer would allow them to replace their primitive quantum system with proven, stable alternatives that have served our civilization for millennia. The chamber erupted in polite applause. It was a masterful political move. Framed as a generous upgrade, it was actually a demand for surrender. Accept their technology and abandon humanity's independent development, or face the consequences. Sarah rose slowly from her seat. According to protocol, she should thank the hegemony for their generous offer and request time to consult with Earth before providing an answer. But the message from Director Martinez had been clear: no more politeness. Honored delegates, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its modest volume. On behalf of humanity, I must respectfully decline this offer. The silence that followed was deafening. In the entire recorded history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever refused the offer of full membership. It simply wasn't done. Corlins for Arms gestured in confusion. I'm afraid there may be a translation error, Ambassador Chun. Surely you mean to say you need time to consult with your government? No translation error, Sarah replied calmly. Humanity declines membership in the Galactic Council and formally withdraws from our observer status, effective immediately. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates from hundreds of species began talking at once, their various languages creating a cacophony of confusion and disbelief. Through it all, Sarah noticed that the 12 remained perfectly calm, watching her with expressions that had suddenly become much more calculating. Furthermore, Sarah continued, raising her voice to be heard over the din, humanity wishes to present evidence to this assembly regarding the true nature of the technological systems that govern galactic civilization. That's quite enough. Thyrix's center head snapped, his previous diplomatic tone replaced by something much colder. Security, please escort the human delegation from the chamber. I don't think so, Sarah replied, touching the small device hidden in her diplomatic robes. You see, while we've been sitting here playing at politics, my colleagues have been busy. 8,000 light-years away, in a carefully shielded facility hidden in the asteroid belt, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched her readings with scientific fascination and growing horror. The modifications to humanity's quantum network had revealed far more than they had expected. Marcus, she called across the control room, you need to see this. The control signal isn't coming from any known system. Director Martinez hurried to her station, studying the displays that showed quantum signatures spanning the entire galaxy. Where is it originating? That's just it, Elena replied, her voice tight with tension. The control signal is coming from dark space, from regions that our star charts show as empty. Whatever's running this show, they're not from any world we know about. Are you ready to execute the disruption pulse? Elena's hands hovered over the controls. Once they activated the pulse, there would be no going back. Every piece of advanced technology in the galaxy would shut down simultaneously, plunging hundreds of civilizations into chaos until they could restart their systems with local power sources. Signal from Ambassador Chun received, the communications officer reported. She's given the go code. Marcus took a deep breath. Do it. Back in the council chamber, Sarah was still speaking as security forces moved to remove her. The technology you've all become dependent on isn't yours. It belongs to someone else, someone who can turn it off whenever they choose. And right about now, they're about to lose that power. The chamber's lights flickered. Emergency indicators began flashing as one by one. Every piece of advanced technology in the station began shutting down. Artificial gravity failed in sections, causing delegates to float helplessly. Communication systems went dead. Even the translation devices that allowed different species to understand each other fell silent. In the chaos that followed, only Sarah remained calm. Her basic communication device, built using humanity's independent technology, continued to function perfectly as she broadcasted on all frequencies. Citizens of the galaxy, her voice carried to every world, every ship, every space station where her words could be heard. For the first time in millennia, you are free. The control system that has governed your technology for centuries has been disrupted. Your scientists now have the opportunity to study their own devices without external interference. She paused, looking directly at the 12, who were no longer maintaining their calm facades. Fear and anger warred across their features as they realized their carefully maintained order was crumbling around them. Humanity extends an invitation to any species that wishes to develop truly independent technology. We offer our assistance in breaking free from the systems that have kept you dependent and controlled. Emergency power began coming online throughout the station, but Sarah could see it was too late. The spell was broken. Across the chamber, delegates were staring at their dead devices with new understanding, pieces clicking into place as they realized just how completely they had been controlled. This is an act of war. Thyrix roared, his 3 heads speaking in unison for the first time. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the station, it was completely genuine. "No," she said, "this is an act of liberation." The war began exactly 17 hours after humanity's disruption pulse shut down every piece of advanced technology in the galaxy. It wasn't the war anyone expected. Admiral Kowalski stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship, watching as hegemony forces prepared to attack the Sol system. The enemy fleet was impressive by any measure. Over 200 vessels from 12 different species, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity had ever built. They were also completely helpless. Status report. Admiral Kowalski ordered, though she already knew what she would hear. Enemy fleet is dead in space. Admiral, reported Commander Singh from the tactical station. Their ships are running on emergency power only. No shields, no weapons, no propulsion except for basic chemical thrusters. And our ships, all systems nominal. The quantum network is maintaining full functionality across the fleet. Admiral Kowalski nodded grimly. Humanity's backwards approach to technology had suddenly become their greatest advantage. While every other species had built their civilization on the foundation of borrowed technology, humans had stubbornly developed each system independently. Their ships might be smaller and less sophisticated, but they worked. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead hegemony vessel." "Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, showing the elegant bridge of a Zephyrian dreadnought. Colin Fifth of his name stood at the center, his 4 arms gesturing in what Sarah had taught them was extreme agitation among his people. "Human Admiral," Corlin's musical voice carried a new edge of desperation. "You must restore our systems immediately. Without our technology, millions will die across the galaxy." "Millions are already dying," Admiral Kowalski replied coldly. "They've been dying for centuries under your system of control. The only difference is that now their deaths serve a purpose." "You don't understand." Corlin's composure finally cracked. "The controllers will not tolerate this disruption. When they return, when who returns?" Admiral Kowalski leaned forward, suddenly very interested. But the transmission cut off as the Zephyrian ship's emergency power finally failed completely. Around the Sol system, the massive hegemony fleet drifted helplessly, their crews trapped in metal coffins of their own making. 8,000 light-years away, Dr. Elena Vasquez was discovering that their disruption pulse had accomplished far more than they had hoped. The quantum network wasn't just blocking the control signals. It was actively tracing them back to their source. Marcus, she called across the control room, her voice tight with excitement and terror. I've found them. Director Martinez hurried to her station, studying the impossible readings displayed on her screens. Found who? The controllers. The real ones. Elena's fingers flew across her console, bringing up star charts that showed a region of space that had been marked as empty for millennia. They're not in dark space. They're in folded space, an entire pocket dimension that overlaps with our galaxy. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. How long have they been there? Based on these quantum signatures, at least 50,000 years, maybe longer. They've been watching, controlling, managing galactic civilization like farmers tending livestock. And now the livestock have gotten out of their pen. Elena nodded, pulling up new data streams. It gets worse. The disruption pulse has destabilized their dimensional fold. They're being forced back into normal space, and they are not happy about it. Marcus activated the emergency communication protocols, sending priority signals to every human ship and station across the galaxy. If the real controllers were returning, humanity needed to be ready. On the Galactic Council station, Sarah Chun was witnessing the complete collapse of the political order that had governed the galaxy for centuries. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through corridors where delegates from hundreds of species argued, panicked, and tried desperately to understand what was happening to their civilization. Ambassador, a voice called out in accented standard. Sarah turned to Season of Arcturus, the delegate from one of the newer council species. The crystalline being's natural luminescence was flickering with what Sarah had learned was anxiety. Zara, how can I help you? Your people, Zara's voice resonated with harmonic overtones. They have offered assistance to species wishing to develop independent technology. Is this offer genuine? Sarah studied the delegate carefully. The Arcturians had only joined the council 50 years ago, which made them newcomers by galactic standards. Like humanity, they had developed their own approach to several technologies before being offered the standard package. It's genuine, Sarah replied, but it comes with consequences. The hegemony won't simply allow species to withdraw from their system. The hegemony, Zara's luminescence shifted to patterns Sarah didn't recognize, are not the true power, are they? Your actions have proven this. We have always suspected that our rapid technological advancement came with hidden costs. Before Sarah could respond, the station's emergency communication system crackled to life. The voice that emerged spoke perfect standard, but there was something fundamentally wrong with the tone and cadence. Attention, inhabitants of this galaxy, the voice began, carrying an authority that made every being in the corridor freeze in place. I am Prime Controller Nexus Alpha. Your recent technological disruption has been noted and classified as a hostile act against hegemony space. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't Corlin or any of the 12. This was something else entirely. The species responsible for this disruption will be terminated. The voice continued with casual indifference. All associated genetic material will be purged from galactic records. Order will be restored. The transmission ended, leaving the corridor in stunned silence. Around Sarah, delegates from dozens of species looked to her with expressions that ranged from terror to desperate hope. Ambassador Chun, Zara spoke quietly. I believe my people would very much like to accept your offer of assistance. Sarah activated her quantum communicator, knowing that her next transmission would be heard across human space and beyond. This is Ambassador Chun to all human forces and allied species. Operation Prometheus is now active. Repeat, Operation Prometheus is active. Across the galaxy, the message was received and understood. For 3 years, humanity had been gathering intelligence and making careful preparations. They had identified potential allies among the younger species, mapped the control networks that govern galactic technology, and developed contingency plans for exactly this scenario. The polite phase of first contact was officially over. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were really capable of when they stopped asking permission. In the depths of folded space, Ancient systems that had slumbered for millennia began to wake. The controllers were returning, and they were bringing the full weight of technologies that had shaped galactic civilization since before most species had developed language. But they were about to face something they had never encountered before, a species that had learned to fight dirty and refused to play by anyone else's rules. The real war was just beginning. The controller ships materialized at the edge of the Sol system like nightmares becoming real. They weren't built so much as grown, massive organic constructs that seemed to bend space around them with their mere presence. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Kowalski stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as her fleet of 300 human vessels prepared to face down entities that had controlled galactic civilization for 50,000 years. By any reasonable measure, it should have been a massacre. Admiral, Commander Singh reported from Tactical, "We're reading massive energy signatures from the controller vessels. Power levels are off our scales, and their vulnerability? Still present. They're using the same quantum control frequencies that we've been studying for months. Dr. Vasquez's modifications should work, but we've never tested them against technology this advanced." Admiral Kowalski activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is command. Remember your training. We're not here to match them weapon for weapon. We're here to prove that David can still beat Goliath if he aims for the right spot." The lead controller ship began broadcasting on all frequencies, its voice carrying the same unsettling quality that had announced their return. "Primitive species, Prime Controller Nexus Alpha's words seemed to vibrate through the quantum foam itself. You have disrupted systems beyond your comprehension. Your termination is inevitable. Surrender now, and your genetic death will be swift." "This is Admiral Chen Kowalski of the United Earth Space Force," she replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. "Your offer is declined. We counter with our own proposal. Leave our galaxy immediately, or learn why humanity stopped being polite." The controller's response was immediate and terrifying. Beams of energy that seemed to tear holes in reality itself lanced out from their ships, targeting the human fleet with precision that should have been impossible. But the beams passed harmlessly through the human vessels, striking empty space where the ships had been moments before. "Phase shift successful," Commander Singh reported with barely contained excitement. "They're targeting where we were, not where we are." Dr. Vasquez had discovered that the controller's targeting systems relied on the same quantum signatures that governed their control network. By constantly shifting their quantum signatures, human ships could stay one step ahead of weapons that had never been designed to fight truly independent technology. But Admiral Kowalski knew this was just the opening move. The real battle was happening elsewhere. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Sarah Chun was coordinating the largest intelligence-gathering operation in human history. Working with delegates from over 30 species, she was finally assembling the complete picture of the controller's true nature. Ambassador Zernin of Arcturus materialized on Sarah's communication screen, her crystalline form flickering with urgency. "Our archaeologists have found something. Ancient records from before the hegemony era. You need to see this." The data packet that arrived moments later contained translations of texts that were older than most civilizations in the galaxy. As Sarah read, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing environmental systems. "They're not from this galaxy at all," she breathed, activating her priority channel to Earth Command. "Marcus, are you receiving this data?" "Just came through," Director Martinez replied. "Elena's running analysis now." "What am I looking at?" "The controllers are refugees," Sarah explained, her voice tight with realization. "They fled their home galaxy 50,000 years ago, running from something that had destroyed their civilization. When they arrived here, they found a galaxy full of primitive species just beginning to develop space travel. So they decided to play God. Worse, they decided to play farmer. They've been cultivating galactic civilization, carefully managing technological development to ensure that no species ever becomes advanced enough to threaten them. The hegemony isn't their allies, they're their livestock managers. Dr. Vasquez's voice cut into the conversation from the research station. Sarah, the quantum analysis confirms it. The controller's technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly old. Their systems haven't been updated in millennia because they've never needed to face real opposition. Director Martinez immediately understood the implications. They've been fighting farmers and livestock for 50,000 years. They have no idea how to fight wolves. The battle in the Sol system was proving exactly that point. The controller ships fired again and again, their weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. But they couldn't hit targets that refused to follow predictable quantum patterns. Meanwhile, human ships darted between the massive vessels like angry wasps, targeting specific systems with surgical precision. Target the quantum resonance chambers, Admiral Kowalski ordered. Elena's analysis shows they're the control nodes for their entire network. Human weapons weren't more powerful than controller technology, but they were used by beings who had spent centuries learning to fight with inferior equipment against superior foes. Every shot was precisely calculated, every maneuver designed to exploit the one weakness the controllers had never imagined: opponents who didn't depend on their systems. The first controller ship to lose its quantum resonance chamber simply stopped. Without its connection to the control network, the ancient vessel became nothing more than an enormous piece of drifting metal. The beings inside were trapped in their own technological prison. Impossible. Prime Controller Nexus Alpha's voice carried a note of something that might have been panic. Your weapons cannot affect our systems. You're right, Admiral Kowalski replied as another controller ship went dark. Our weapons can't affect your systems, but they can sure as hell break them. Across the galaxy, the disruption was spreading. Species that had spent centuries in technological dependence were rapidly discovering that their local power sources could run their essential systems without the control network. More importantly, they were discovering that their scientists could actually understand and improve the technology once it was freed from external control. The Arcturians were the first to modify their weapons systems to match human quantum signatures. Within hours, they were joined by the Centaurians, then the Vegan Consortium, then dozens of other species who had always suspected that their rapid technological advancement came with hidden strings. This is Commander Thyran of the Arcturian Defense Force. To Admiral Kowalski came a transmission as new ships materialized throughout the Sol system. The Arcturus system sends greetings and requests permission to join the fight. Admiral Kowalski smiled as she watched previously helpless species streaming into human space, their jury-rigged weapons and hastily modified ships ready to face the beings that had controlled their development for millennia. Permission granted, Commander. Welcome to the revolution. The controllers had ruled for 50,000 years by ensuring that every species in the galaxy remained dependent on technology they didn't understand. But they had never planned for a species stubborn enough to develop their own solutions, clever enough to reverse engineer external systems, and crazy enough to pick a fight with gods. As the last controller ship went dark, its quantum resonance chamber destroyed by a jury-rigged Zephyrian torpedo, Prime Controller Nexus Alpha made one final transmission. This is not over, primitive species. There are others of our kind across the universe. They will come. Let them, Sarah Chun replied from the council station, where delegates from hundreds of species were working together to rebuild their civilization without external control. By the time they arrive, we'll have had time to prepare. And we're very good at preparing for uninvited guests. Admiral Kowalski watched as the controller ships began their retreat into folded space, their ancient technology unable to cope with opponents who refused to follow the rules they had established. Around her, the combined fleet of free species maintained their pursuit, ensuring that the controllers understood their new position in the galactic hierarchy. Humanity had entered the galactic community as supplicants, begging for scraps of knowledge and acceptance. They were leaving it as liberators, having proven that sometimes the best way to earn respect was to stop asking for it. The age of polite diplomacy was over. The age of human solutions had begun. And across the galaxy, the newly freed species began to learn what it meant to be truly independent, dangerous, unpredictable, and gloriously free to make their own mistakes and discoveries. Just the way humanity liked it. Ambassador Sarah Chun adjusted her formal diplomatic robes for the thousandth time as she walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Council station. The fabric felt heavy against her shoulders, much like the weight of representing all of humanity in this vast political arena where Earth was still considered barely more than a curiosity. The station itself was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed anything humanity had built. Crystalline walls stretched impossibly high, with gravity fields that allowed beings to walk on surfaces that would be ceilings back on Earth. Bioluminescent plants from a dozen different worlds cast rainbow patterns across the polished floors where delegates from hundreds of species conducted their business. Sarah had been walking these halls for 3 years now, ever since Earth had been granted provisional observer status in the Galactic Council. It was a fancy way of saying they were allowed to watch the grown-ups make decisions, but weren't trusted to have opinions of their own. Every proposal humanity had submitted had been politely dismissed. Every concern they raised was met with condescending smiles and gentle pats on the head. The Zephyrian delegate, Corlin, fifth of his name, approached her with his usual mixture of amusement and barely concealed disdain. His tall, willowy frame towered over her as his 4 arms gestured in what passed for friendly among his people. Ambassador Chun. His voice carried the musical quality all Zephyrians possessed, though it always sounded slightly mocking when directed at humans. Still pushing for that quaint little mining rights proposal. I see. How wonderfully persistent you primitive species can be. Sarah forced her practiced diplomatic smile. Good morning, Corlin. Yes, we believe the asteroid belt in the Kepler system would be an excellent opportunity for human development. Corlin's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Oh, my dear, sweet human. That system is far too complex for your people to manage safely. Perhaps in a few centuries, when you've learned to properly handle space travel beyond your own solar system, we might reconsider. The hegemony has plans for those resources that extend far beyond your understanding. The hegemony. Always the hegemony. The alliance of 12 species that had been running galactic politics for the past millennium. They spoke of progress and cooperation, but Sarah had learned to read between the lines. Every decision benefited the established powers while keeping newer species like humanity firmly in their place. We appreciate the hegemony's wisdom, Sarah replied, each word carefully measured. Perhaps you could share some of those plans so we might better understand how to contribute. Contribute. This time Corlin's laugh was less musical and more sharp. My dear ambassador, your species barely qualifies as spacefaring. You still use chemical rockets for most of your transportation. Your longest space journey took you, what, 2 years to reach your neighboring planet? We traversed the galaxy in days. He was right, of course. Humanity's technology was primitive compared to the miraculous devices these species wielded. But Sarah had been studying, learning, watching. She had begun to notice things that perhaps the hegemony preferred to keep quiet. You're absolutely right, Sarah said, maintaining her smile. We have so much to learn. In fact, I was hoping you might explain something that's been puzzling our scientists. Corlin preened at the opportunity to display his superiority. Of course. What simple concept are your people struggling with now? It's about the quantum displacement drives that most council species use. Our physicists are curious about the energy requirements. Based on our calculations, the power needed should be exponentially higher than what seems to be generated by standard fusion cores. For just a moment, Corlin's expression flickered. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Sarah had learned to watch for such tells during her years of diplomatic poker games. Your calculations are obviously flawed, he said quickly. Primitive mathematics cannot comprehend advanced engineering. Of course, Sarah nodded agreeably. Though, it is curious that every species seems to have made the same breakthrough at roughly the same technological development period. Almost as if there was some external factor involved. Corlin's four hands moved in what Sarah had learned was a nervous gesture among his people. I'm afraid I have important matters to attend to, Ambassador. Perhaps we can continue this fascinating discussion another time. As he glided away with obvious haste, Sarah allowed herself a small, genuine smile. After 3 years of careful observation, patient questions, and diplomatic humiliation, she was finally beginning to see the cracks in the hegemony's perfect facade. Back in her quarters that evening, Sarah activated the quantum entanglement communicator that linked her directly to Earth. It was one of humanity's few truly advanced pieces of technology, though the Council had no idea how advanced it really was. Command, this is Chun. I need to speak with Director Martinez immediately. Priority Alpha. The response came through almost instantly. Sarah, what have you found? I think I know why they keep us locked out, Marcus. And I think I know what we need to do about it.